I've been fascinated by WoW emulations since I was 14. I remember the first time I joined one of those special realms. There were a lot of bugs, but you could play for free at least, you know. I didn't have a red cent at the time, so I just had no alternative. At 15, I began wondering how private servers actually worked and could exist, especially from a technical perspective. Did someone steal the code from Blizzard maybe? I had no idea. I was so young and inexperienced at the time. Despite that, I started messing around, and with the help of an old friend of mine, Fabio, I finally managed to install a WoW server on my own PC. Back then, I couldn't even imagine the amount of satisfaction I would get and how many things I would have learned thanks to this magical world. It may sound weird, but this world still fascinates me now as an adult, at the point that I dedicated an entire master's degree thesis in computer science to this very topic. But still, I hate most of the private servers, and I really want to explain why. In order to make you understand my point of view, I need to dwell on a small technical parenthesis about WoW working process, which I will try to put in simple words. At the software level, there are two programs that could be considered as the main actors of this game. The client application, which is the actual World of Warcraft program installed by every player on their computer in order to access the game. The server application, which is the program that runs on the server machines. The process is very simple. All clients, or players, connect to a server in order to interact with each other. The client knows the server address, as it's stored in the famous realm list WTF. That's why you have to modify the file in order to switch to another server.
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
When playing on private servers, the principle is exactly the same. The difference lies in the software you use. Client. Everyone has access to the original World of Warcraft client. You can easily get it by buying it or downloading online. This program is exactly the one that you would use to play on the official server. Obviously, different private servers have different client versions, but they always refer to the original client. You just need to make a small change to the realm list WTF, replacing the address of the retail server address with the one on the private server one. That's it. The server is completely different though. Nobody outside Blizzard has access to the original software that runs the official World of Warcraft servers, so these applications are completely different from the original one. Every software that runs private servers have been created through the reverse engineering technique, which in simple words means I try to write a program that imitates the behavior of another program without looking at the original code. The question now is, who implemented the software and when did it happen? Who creates the software applications that run WoW's private servers? And how do they do it? You don't need to be an expert to understand that writing a server application for an MMORPG with such a big scope like World of Warcraft is certainly not child's play. Blizzard is a big company with thousands of employees. Writing a program that imitates the operation of their server application is certainly not trivial or feasible for a single individual or a small group of programmers. And it's not just a matter of complexity. Let's think of very trivial but repetitive tasks like adding every NPC into the world, including every single item of their loot with its own percentage of chance. A huge amount of work, not to mention all the very complex tasks that require hours of study and testing, such as spell mechanics, boss mechanics, etc. In short, not even the best programmer in the world could be able to do all of this work on her or his own. Yet there are private servers, and the software that makes them run. And some private servers are now able to offer a game quality that is not far from the original one. Here I refer mainly to the old expansions. How is that possible? If you have an apple and I have an apple and we exchange these apples, then you and I will still each have one apple. But if you have an idea and I have an idea and we exchange these ideas, then each of us will have two ideas. Just to make it simple, an open source program is a program whose code is public. In the context of private service, the open source plays a fundamental role. Some veteran gamers may remember that once the game quality on private service was really bad. Almost nothing worked. For example, if you were a rogue in stealth, you could be targeted by anyone who wrote /target your name. Guess which class I chose for my first character? The real revolution was Mangoes. It's an open source project created in 2005, whose purpose was to provide a server application for World of Warcraft. The great news about Mangoes, as well as its strength, was the fact that it was an open source application. Its code was completely public, and any user from all over the world could study it and offer their own contribution, both in terms of adding or fixing game mechanics, but also in terms of reporting bugs. Only in this way, thanks to the contribution of many volunteers of different nationalities, it was possible to develop a server application capable of emulating World of Warcraft with a high game quality. In 2009, another important project based on Mangoes was born, named ÇRİNITY. To this date, the overwhelming majority of private servers run on Mangoes ÇRİNITY based applications. Over the years, different projects were born, and they were based on Mangoes ÇRİNITY code, which mainly varies according to the supported WoW version. For example, Azeroth Core for 3.3.5, Oregon Core for 2.4.3, Skyfire for 5.4.8, Sea Mangoes for Classic, The Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, and many others. All of them based on Mangoes or ÇRİNITY. So the private servers have reached such a quality only thanks to the many contributors who have implemented more and more game features over the years, from 2005 to this day. Suppose that Alice and Bob have their own private servers. Let's assume that they're on the same version of the game. Both Alice and Bob want to release new content for their players, which has been closed so far because the bosses A, B, C, and D are quite buggy. Alice is a very good developer and can fix both A and B bosses. Bob is still a beginner and can only fix the boss C. In an ideal world, Alice and Bob work together and exchange their fixes. As a result, both of their servers will have perfectly fixes for both A, B, and C bosses. In addition, Alice and Bob will join forces in order to work on boss D as well. As a result, the players on both servers are pretty happy. They don't have any problems with the bugs since the developers are collaborating together in order to fix them. However, in the real world, Alice and Bob are rivals, so they wage war against each other. In Alice's server, only bosses A and B work, while in Bob's server, only C. Some players move to Bob's server, to Alice's one. Bob's server closes after a while. Some of Alice's server's players stop playing because they get tired of only doing boss A and B because boss C and D just don't work. As a result, the players on both servers are unsatisfied. Furthermore, Alice made more money through player donations than Bob did.
It's just good business.
Actually, the Mangoes or ÇRİNITY code and their derivant project is released under the GNU GPL license. In simple words, the license says the following: use the code to do whatever you want without paying anything, as long as any modification to the original code is also released under the same license. Basically, the license of these projects requires those who use them to publish any changes to the public. Of course, most private servers use this license as toilet paper. Otherwise, there should be no private server that is quote-unquote better fixed than others. Here is the list of lies that the administrators of many WoW private servers keep telling to their players. We wrote this core. It doesn't matter how many changes you made. However, you started with Mango's based project. Maybe you've made some improvements, but most of the code is still Mango's or Trinity cores. Maybe you're really good and you have written most of the code over the years. Still, you started from Mango's. Without it, on day one, you wouldn't even have got the login feature working. We have fixed this. In the vast majority of cases, none of them has really fixed anything. They have just downloaded the fixes coming from the open source code community and applied them to their core. Still, they take all credits. We really fixed this. Some private servers really fix stuff on their own. They often have dedicated development teams that are paid with the money coming from players' donations. Most of them do not share these fixes with the development community. Well, the community that gave for free the software you're using to run your server is asking you to share them, but you still keep it private. I keep them private to make my server a special place, better than the others. Alright dude, try to think about it like this. If all developers did what you do, neither you nor your private server would even exist. Why? Simply because neither Mango's nor Trinity Core, Azeroth Core, etc. would exist. These projects exist thanks to the developers who, unlike you, shared their code. But if I shared my fixes, the competition would steal them. There is nothing to, quote, steal. They can't steal the code because it doesn't belong to you. No, not even if you really wrote it. The open source philosophy is clear. You can use the code for free, provided that any modification of it must be made public. Oh, you don't agree? Alright, then don't use any open source code and write your own WoW emulator from scratch. I totally understand that this whole story about ethics and licenses matter very little to the average World of Warcraft player. Players just want to play on a stable and well-fixed server. They don't care much whether this server collaborates with open source or not. But try for a moment to see it from another perspective. Developers of the open source projects basically don't care much about what private servers do. Of course, as a developer, it pisses you off to see some random server administrator taking credits for your work. But in the end, it doesn't change your life. Many open source developers just do it for fun and educational purposes. Actually, if all private servers collaborated with open source, the players' lives would change completely. Every server would provide a much better game experience for any expansion. The example of Alice and Bob mentioned before can be applied to this case as well. However, the reality is just that there are many private servers around the world, each of them always work on the same thing, racing to do them sooner or later or better. If they collaborated with each other instead, they would avoid doing unnecessary work and would have more time and workforce. And because of that, they would surely be able to achieve much more. If a private server closes and its developers have not shared their work, that work will be lost forever. The most interesting thing is that all Mango's based projects are completely public, so it's possible to accurately verify who contributed to them. All the contributors list of these projects are completely public and anyone can verify who actually fixed what. Any open source project, generally hosted on GitHub, has a special list of commits by different developers. For each commit, both the author and the date are there. It is very easy to verify this information. Just open the official repository of any emulator. Google, for example, Trinity Core GitHub or Azeroth Core GitHub, and just have a look. You will see who does really what. You will see all the lines of code, their authors. You will see everything. No more lies. I've tried to explain things here as simple as possible, so what you're going to read might not be 100% technically accurate or detailed, but I really did my best to put things in simple words in order to make it understandable for non-developers. Links will be provided in the description. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.